A leaked clip from the UK Coast Guard shows a humanoid figure with glowing eyes breaching the surface. In a murky lake video, a swimmer dives down and is met with a loud, deep growl. What he captures next is chilling. And just what is this thing thrashing in the water? Well, these are more real mermaid sightings deep-sea fishermen can't explain. Do you spot something in the water here? It's hard to see at first, took me a few watches, but here it is slowed down. Keep your eye on the right-hand side of the screen. A creepy humanoid figure breaches the water before slipping back down below and presumably swimming to the left side of the boat because the sailor reacts, moving to the other side trying to keep his eye on the thing. This was supposedly leaked footage from the UK Coast Guard. They've been searching for a man who'd gone overboard. Whatever they spotted here though was clearly not human. The speed of this thing, the way it moves, the glowing eyes, very unsettling. This is a pretty creepy video. It was filmed in what looks like a lake, and I'm not sure where, but a dude is filming himself swimming around in the murky water. He comes up to get some air, and when he dives back down, we hear this loud growling sound. Take a listen to this. The idea of swimming out in the lake alone and then ducking your head down underwater to see and hear that, yeah, that's a no thank you. And I'd be out of the water so fast, or I'd just have a heart attack and I would drown. Instead, cameraman decides to follow this thing though. Again, it's really effective. The sound here, the murkiness of the water, it just adds some real creep factor to the whole thing. This isn't the type of mermaid video where you're in this beautiful, blue water and it's all gorgeous. This is different. Finally though, the guy comes back up out of the water and we see this. What do you think of this one? Real or hoax? Let us know down in the comments. Can you describe what's going on here? Something's definitely in the water. This video doesn't look doctored to me. As for what it is though, I have no idea. I don't have any info on this clip. I don't know where it was filmed, or I don't know who the original uploader is. People are pretty divided in the comments too. A couple people say it looks like something eating a seal, others say an otter, crocodile, snake, Nessie, and of course, possible mermaid sighting. There are also a lot of comments that are just hearts or like laughing emojis for some reason. Are those the feelings you get watching something weird undulating underwater? Like, oh. Are people okay? This next story comes to us from Reddit from a now deleted user. He worked as a fisherman though and wrote the following. I've debated posting this for a while. I used to run deep sea charters out of Valdez, mostly halibut and black cod. Commercial and sport. Not much spooks me. I've seen weird lights, heard things I can't explain, but chalked it up to fatigue or whiskey. What happened in 2014 still bothers me. It was just me, an old-timer, Bobby, and a deckhand, Reed. We were about 100 miles offshore. Calm water, overcast skies, quiet. Around 2 a.m., Reed comes up from the stern and says, "You hear that?" We kill the engine, and sure enough, there it is. This faint, echoing singing from somewhere out on the water. A woman's voice, slow and drawn out. It didn't sound recorded, it sounded wet, like it was coming from beneath us. That's when Bobby starts walking toward the edge of the deck, like he's in a daze. I grab his jacket before he leans over. He looks at me like I just woke him up from a dream. Says it felt like someone was humming right next to his ear. The singing stopped after maybe 5 minutes. We didn't say much the rest of the trip. I've worked these waters 20 years. That's the only night I've ever felt like we weren't alone out there. This next video comes out of France. Apparently a diving instructor decided to scrub through security camera footage after hearing something. So we see a woman walk in wearing nothing but a towel. She then dives into the water, pretty normal so far, aside from the fact that the woman kind of reminds me of the ghost girl from The Ring. But then the water starts to bubble and churn, like something's happening under there. And that's when we see the water start overflowing out of the pool. This woman is having quite the swim. Then we cut to security camera down below and see what looks like a webbed hand press up against the glass enclosure. This is a pretty effective video. video. Definitely gets the imagination going. Is it real though? I'm going to go ahead and let you be the judge of that.
During the Cold War, Soviet submarines patrolling near the Sea of Japan recorded something bizarre on their sonar. What sounded like high-pitched singing, followed by multiple fast-moving underwater objects surrounding their vessel. At first, the crew believed it was a foreign sub, but no signatures matched known technology. One sonar technician described the singing as, quote, almost human, but not quite. Years later, after the fall of the USSR, some of these logs were leaked to independent researchers. Many now believe the Soviets may have encountered the same mysterious beings that Pacific Island cultures describe as sea sisters, a group of female spirits or creatures who travel in pods, warning or punishing those who disturb the ocean. Off the island of Vis, off the Croatian coast, sailors have long spoken of sea girls who appear in the moonlight singing to fishermen. And in 2016, something strange happened. A group of night fishermen swore they saw 3 long-haired women sitting on coastal rocks. They were naked, appeared to shimmer in the moonlight, and vanished into the sea when approached. Initially laughed off by the public, the story gained traction when cell phone footage surfaced, brief and grainy, but showing 3 glowing shapes diving in unison. Marine biologists later confirmed the video showed, quote, no known animal behavior, and that area is now unofficially off limits to small boats at night. This one isn't a legend, it's actually a scientific theory with some strange implications. The aquatic ape hypothesis suggests that a branch of human evolution may have adapted to life in the water, developing traits like subcutaneous fat, breath control, and even partial webbing between fingers and toes. Mainstream science largely rejects it, but here's the strange part. People in remote coastal areas from Indonesia to Mozambique describe sightings of humanoid creatures with those exact features. Webbed hands, smooth hairless bodies, exceptional swimming speed. Could these be descendants of a lost evolutionary branch? Some anthropologists aren't laughing anymore, especially after scuba divers found handprints in underwater caves far deeper than any known human could reach without modern gear. In 1830s Louisiana, newspapers ran with a bizarre story. A fishwoman had been spotted multiple times along the banks of the Mississippi River near Baton Rouge. Witnesses described a creature with long black hair, pale skin, and fish-like lower limbs. The sightings caused panic, people refused to bathe or fish in the river, and boat captains rerouted cargo trips. What's wild is that these stories didn't go away. In 1842, a letter to the editor in the New Orleans Bee referenced an aquatic woman with haunting eyes spotted again, and even blamed her for a sunken steamboat. While no physical evidence ever surfaced, the consistency and fear surrounding these sightings make them stand out among American mermaid lore. In 2021, a team of researchers studying glacial melt near Greenland dropped a deep-sea camera into a subglacial cave. What they captured shocked them. A figure, upright, bipedal, but unmistakably aquatic. This creature hovered in the background for several seconds before darting away. The footage was dismissed by officials as, quote, distorted data, but the researchers who collected it told a different story in private. According to them, they reviewed the raw footage frame by frame and watched as the figure turned its head toward the camera, revealing wide-set eyes and thin gill slits. They called them shadow divers, beings that exist on the edge of where life should be possible. And if you ask them off the record, they'll say that we are not alone down there. What if mermaids aren't just the stuff of storybooks and sailor tales? What if they were real and still out there? For centuries, cultures all around the world have told eerily similar stories about mysterious, half-human creatures living in the sea. And while Hollywood wants us to think of them as friendly singers with fishtails, history tells a much darker and much weirder story. These aren't just myths. Some of these encounters were recorded by respected explorers, witnessed by by entire communities and even caused governments to get involved. In 2009, residents of a quiet coastal town in Israel called Kiryat Yam started reporting something completely bizarre: a mermaid seen lounging on rocks at sunset before diving into the sea. Dozens of witnesses claimed to see the same thing: a female figure with pale skin, a fishtail, and long dark hair. The sightings became so frequent and credible that the local government did something no one ever expected. They offered a $1 million reward for anyone who could prove the mermaid's existence. One man said he watched her do a backflip before vanishing. Another woman swore she saw her tail slap the water. News outlets across the world picked up the story, camera crews came, tourists showed up, and yet no one was able to capture solid proof. But the stories didn't stop, and here is the weirdest part: the reward still stands to this day unclaimed. When Christopher Columbus spotted land in the Caribbean, he wasn't just discovering new territory, he may have discovered a mermaid. In his 1493 ship log, Columbus described seeing 3 creatures rise from the water with the upper bodies of women and tails like fish. His exact words: "They are not as pretty as they are depicted, for somehow in the face they look like men." Most historians chalk this up to a manatee sighting, but that doesn't fully make sense. Columbus was an experienced navigator, he knows what manatees looked like, and why would he mention their faces at all if it was just a sea cow? What makes this more intriguing is that other sailors on his crew also reported similar sightings. These weren't isolated events, they were shared, consistent, and written down in one of the most famous explorer journals of all time. Could Columbus have stumbled onto something we've since lost? In the rough, stormy waters between the Scottish mainland and the Outer Hebrides lies a stretch known as the Minch, and sailors have feared it for generations. The reason? A strange and sinister race of sea beings called the Blue Men. These weren't graceful mermaids, these were blue-skinned, human-sized aquatic beings who were said to control storms and drown ships. Legend says they would swim up to a boat and shout poetry or riddles at the captain. If the captain failed to answer in rhyme, the Blue Men would overturn the vessel. While this sounds like classic mythology, here's a very strange thing. This exact story has been passed down for hundreds of years with very little variation. Sailors in that area regularly experience unexplainable equipment failure, freak waves, and vanishings. To this day, some Scottish fishermen won't sail through this area without leaving an offering in the water. Superstition or something they're too afraid to talk about? You decide. In 2012, construction crews working at 2 separate dam sites in Zimbabwe refused to return to work. The reason? They claimed that they were being harassed and even physically attacked by mermaids living in the water. This wasn't just a local rumor, it reached Zimbabwe's House of Assembly. High-ranking government officials confirmed the stoppage and admitted traditional healers were being brought in to appease the water spirits. The mermaids, known in the local Shona culture, are believed to live in deep pools and protect sacred water sources. Locals describe them as beautiful but dangerous beings who can bless or curse anyone who crosses them. Despite pressure, workers wouldn't return until ceremonies were held, and after the rituals, work resumed without further incident. That kind of mass fear, especially among adults working a government project, doesn't just come from total imagination. Something in those waters had to have scared them.
Now, just what exactly is this sound? It was recorded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, in 1991, and to this day nobody knows what it is, so, I mean, it's gotta be mermaids, right? The upsweep is one of those deep-sea mysteries that scientists still haven't been able to fully explain. What's cool is that unlike other weird ocean sounds that were only picked up once, the upsweep's been recorded every year since 1991. It seems to follow a seasonal pattern. getting louder during certain times of the year and then fading. But even after decades of listening, no one's been able to figure out exactly where it's coming from. Some researchers think it could be connected to volcanic activity deep under the ocean, but some others wonder if the sound might actually be coming from some unknown sea creature we haven't discovered yet. We always hear vague stories about mermaid sightings way back in the day, but do we have any specific accounts? Well, yes, quite a bit actually. In 1603, for example, a farmer named Thomas Reynolds saw what looked like a mermaid in the water off the coast of Wales near Pendine. He called over other people and together they watched the creature for about 3 hours. According to their description, the creature was partly human with the upper body of a woman, but from the waist down it looked like a fish. A man named William Saunders, another local, took the time to carefully examine what Reynolds and the other witnesses had seen. He listened to their stories and found their accounts believable enough to document everything. In fact, the sighting was taken seriously enough that in 1604, just a year later, the story showed up in the paper, along with an illustration to show what they described. The mermaid was recorded as a, quote, monstrous fish that appeared in the form of a woman from her waist upward. A guy in South Africa claimed to have spotted a mermaid-like creature in 2008 in the small village of Surbrak. A man named Daniel Cupido and his mother Dina were near the river around 11:30 at night when they heard a loud banging noise. Cupido said it sounded like someone bashing on a wall, so he went to check it out, and when he got closer, Cupido said he saw something strange thrashing. He described the figure as looking like a, quote, white woman with long black hair thrashing about in the water. Concerned, he tried to help, but as he approached, the creature let out this strange sound that his mother said was so sorrowful her heart couldn't take it anymore. Some believe that what they saw that night may have been what's called a caiman, and I don't mean like caiman like the alligator type animal. The caiman is said to be a half-human, half-fish creature that lives in deep river pools. Surbrak tourism officer Maggie Gentry supported the group's story too, saying she personally knew the witnesses and made it clear that they were not people who drank heavily or made up stories. She said she trusted their word and believed that they genuinely saw something that night. Between 1887 and 1913, people along the coast of Deerness and the Orkney Islands kept spotting something strange in the water. Dozens of people, farmers, fishermen, and tourists, reported seeing the same thing over and over. The creature became known as the Deerness mermaid. One witness described it like this: it is about 6 to 7 feet in length, has a little black head with neck, a snow-white body and 2 arms, and in swimming, it just appears like a human being. At times it will appear to be siding on a sunken rock and will wave and work its hands. Sightings like this became so frequent in the summer that it pretty much became a part of the local culture. People even wrote plays about it. And then in 1913, off the southeastern coast of Hoy, another group had their own run-in with something that matched the same description. A fisherman named Ralph Taylor and his crew saw what they thought was a mermaid while checking their lobster pots. Taylor described the account as follows: it rose out of the water to the height of 3 feet and looked like a lady with a shawl round her shoulders and streaming down her face. The ningen is a mysterious sea creature that people in Japan have reported seeing over the last several years, and it sounds a little bit like a mermaid. Not the beautiful mermaid we all think of, but a mermaid-like creature. Ningen is said to live in the icy waters of the Antarctic and is described as completely white, human-shaped, and can grow up to 20 to 30 meters long. Witnesses say the creature sometimes has arms, legs, 5-fingered hands, fins, tails. One sighting came from a whale research ship. First, the crew thought they were looking at a foreign submarine, but when they got closer, realized what they were actually looking at was a living creature, which quickly disappeared back under the water. In November of 2007, MU Magazine published a Google Earth screenshot that seemed to capture the ningen in the South Atlantic Ocean. There have been rumors that the Japanese government keeps detailed records of ningen sightings, but hasn't made any of them public. Mermaids. We'd all love to believe they exist, or would we? If mermaid-like creatures really do exist somewhere in the vastness of the ocean, are they something we'd ever want to come face to face with? These are some of the creepiest mermaid stories and footage. This is a piece of supposed mermaid footage captured in Spain. It was taken back in 2013. A man was filming the scenery while cruising around on a tour boat in Mallorca, but something odd showed up on camera. Sitting on a mound of rocks just off the shore was a very odd-looking creature. It had an elongated tail and a bit of a bluish hue, obviously an aquatic animal, but zooming in closer, this thing looks unlike any known animal in the world. The upper part of the body appears to be kinda human-like, with two humanoid arms and a round head, and at first you think that it's completely still, almost like it could be a sculpture or something, but as you can see, it does move its arms. So is this a genuine piece of mermaid footage, or is it just a hoax done with CGI? Is someone sitting in a fish suit out there? As for every piece of footage on this list, let us know down in the comments what your thoughts are. This next one's kinda sad, because it's a dead mermaid, or at least it could be. Folks aren't really sure what this thing is, to be honest, but it certainly creeped out a lot of people. Just back in July of 2023, mysterious remains washed ashore on an Australian beach, along the shores of Keppel Sands, Queensland. A local named Bobby Lee Oates stumbled on these skeletal remains that have not been definitively identified. But what a lot of folks online started commenting was that these skeletal remains had almost mermaid-like features, describing the find as approximately 6 feet in length, with a human-shaped skull, an elongated jawline, and distinctive hair reminiscent of a cow or kangaroo, albeit with a lot of decomposition. Oates shared her findings with the Marine Biology Facebook group. The remains also appeared to possess a tail or limb of some kind. Rob DeVille, an expert from the UK Cetacean Strandings Investigation Program, cautiously weighed in on these images, saying that the possibility of it being the remains of a small cetacean species was high, but he couldn't fully confirm because of his unfamiliarity with the typical marine life in the area, and, of course, just how decomposed the thing was. One of the scariest versions of the mermaid myth has to be the ningen, a creature that people in Japan have actually reported seeing over the past few years. So in recent years, rumors have spread in Japan about mysterious humanoid creatures known as ningen, which are said to live in the icy waters of the Antarctic. These creatures are said to be completely white and can grow between 20 to 30 meters long. Witnesses have described them having a human-like shape with arms, legs, and sometimes even 5-fingered hands. Some say they have fins or tails, kinda like mermaids, or tentacles. In one sighting, the crew of a whale research ship thought they saw a foreign submarine, but when they got closer, they realized that what they were actually looking at was a living creature, which quickly vanished underwater. Then in November of 2007, an issue of MU magazine included a Google Earth screenshot that seemed to show one in the South Atlantic Ocean. The Japanese government has been rumored to be keeping detailed records of sightings, but of course, they haven't released any information to the public. Eyewitnesses are reportedly instructed to stay silent. From Reddit user OldSupermarket5657 comes a tale I'm going to call the Lightning Mermaid, and goes as follows. In 2021, I was in Montego Bay, Jamaica. I was sitting on the beach alone during a silent lightning storm at night, and all of a sudden I felt this intense urge to run into the water. Mind you, I don't swim. After a while, the urge intensified, and I stupidly went to put my feet in the water. I remember the water was bubbling and it was pitch black, and I immediately felt this sense of dread and danger and ran back out of the water. After getting out, I went back to sit down on my folding chair, and out of nowhere, a bolt of lightning lit up the sky and the sea, and I saw a big black figure with long hair not too far away from me, just staring at me from the water. After the lightning was gone, the figure was nowhere to be found. I sat there for a half an hour trying to figure out what I'd just seen, but it never happened again. I really believe that it was a mermaid trying to take me out into the sea. Holy crap, this thing is terrifying. I mean, I think I'd rather come across just about anything else washed up on the beach than this. Surprisingly, this freakish looking thing actually showed up on eBay. It isn't listed on there anymore. These photos were shared way back in 2006, but someone bid on this thing. There were so many stories floating around about these mysterious images at the time. Some stories went that the creature was found in Mexico, others said South Africa, the Philippines, the list goes on. But apparently someone came across this thing while exploring Fort DeSoto Beach at the southern end of St. Petersburg, Florida. At least That's what the online auction said. Just keep it the hell away from me. In July of 2023, a woman named Bobby Lee Oates was driving along Keppel Sands in Queensland, Australia, looking for a place to camp when something weird caught her eye on the beach. It was this decayed, half-buried skeleton with a long, stretched-out tail and what looked like a human skull sitting right at the top. She snapped some photos and described it as exactly like a mermaid shape. The ribs were showing, the limbs were mostly gone, but the way the bones were laid out, it really did look like some creepy, washed-up sea creature. And when the images hit the internet, they went viral. Some thought it might have been a kangaroo leg stretched out and mangled by the ocean. Others said it looked like a badly decomposed dolphin or seal. Marine experts eventually stepped in and said, yeah, it was probably just one of those, just a gross beached carcass, but until this day, we still don't know exactly what this thing was. So technically, we can't rule out mermaids altogether. In 2006, locals in a small town in Malaysia came across this tiny, dried-up mermaid mummy about a foot long. It had a shriveled face, little arms, and a tail. In 2014, another one appeared, this time in Papua New Guinea. Almost identical, leathery skin, tiny claws, and that unmistakable mermaid tail. Once again, these were your classic carnival props. The mummies were made by stitching a smaller mammal or monkey's torso onto a fishtail, then drying the whole thing out to look old and mummy-like. These fake mermaids were all over Southeast Asia in the 19th and early 20th centuries, sold to curious tourists and local curiosities collectors. No DNA tests or CT scans have been done on these particular ones, but based on what we know, they're pretty much exactly the same kind of monkey-fish hybrids that P.T. Barnum used in his sideshows. This video was filmed right after a hurricane. We watch as the person holding the camera walks along a beach covered in fallen trees and debris. Then they spot something strange washed up on the sand. At first glance, looks like a big dead fish, but as the camera gets closer, you notice there's hair on it. The person filming keeps moving in and we get a better look. This looks to be a gnarly, mummified mermaid. And not the beautiful, magical version we like to imagine. To be fair, none of the entries on this list really have been. At best, they've been skeleton bones, and at the worst, they've been freakish-looking monsters. Now, sure, we've already established that something like this could be faked, and you probably shouldn't need me to tell you that, but if this is a hoax, it's pretty well done. One of the top comments on the video from user Cajun2197 says, I have seen real mummies. This looks frighteningly real. The skin pulled back around the mouth as it dried, bulging eyes, taut cheekbones, the ribs and pelvis under dark, dried flesh. The fins brittle, exactly like a dead fish drying in the sun. In a temple in Okayama, Japan, there's this tiny 12-inch mermaid that people thought had been caught in a fishing net sometime between 1736 and 1741. It's kept in a box, sometimes displayed in a glass case. The legend goes that eating the flesh could make you live forever. But scientists from Kurashiki University CT scanned it and found almost no real bones inside. The torso is mostly cloth, paper, cotton, even sand and charcoal held together by metal pins. On the surface, they did find fish skin and mammal hair, pufferfish parts on the arms, and the jaw and teeth from a predatory fish, plus claws that looked like they came from a lizard. The CT scans showed clear wooden stakes running through it to keep the shape intact, but it's still pretty cool because it is an old artifact. Radiocarbon dating says it probably dates to the late 1800s. Eerie sounds from the depths of the sea have been reported since the early days of exploration, and sightings of mermaids go back just as far. Today we're diving into some of the unsettling sounds of the sea that might just be linked to the legends of mermaids. From haunting melodies that lure sailors to bizarre noises recorded in the depths of the ocean, these are unsettling sounds of mermaids that scientists are trying to translate. Legends have long depicted mermaids as sirens of the sea, luring sailors with their beautiful songs. The idea of mermaids singing haunting melodies dates back centuries and spans across different cultures. So really, sound is one of the most integral parts of mermaid lore. In many tales, their voices are described as both enchanting and unsettling, able to draw people into the depths of the ocean, sometimes never to be seen again. Take the famous story of the sirens from Greek mythology, for instance. These creatures sang irresistible songs that led sailors to shipwreck on rocky shores. Similarly, in Irish folklore, the Marrow, a mermaid-like creature, was known for her beautiful voice voice, often depicted as singing while combing her hair on the rocks. But not all mermaid songs are sweet and melodic. Some are described as mournful or eerie. But are these stories just myths and legends, or could there be some truth to them? The ocean is vast, mysterious, and most of it is unexplored. So let's talk about some of the eeriest unexplained sounds in more modern times. One of the most unnerving sounds ever recorded in our oceans is known as the upsweep, which has earned its place on the NOAA's list of unidentified underwater noises, and for good reason. First heard back in 1991, the upsweep is a series of high-pitched sounds that rise in frequency almost like an eerie musical scale going up and up. Just imagine listening to it while alone on a boat in the vast Pacific Ocean. I mean, you wouldn't technically be able to hear it without fancy equipment, but let's just say you did have some for some reason. It'd be pretty unnerving. Scientists have some theories as to what made this sound, but none are definitive answers. Some think it could be related to geological activity, others imagine it being the calls of unknown creatures deep in the abyss. The bio-twang. This sound was recorded in 2014 in the depths of the Mariana Trench, which already makes this one pretty creepy. Just the thought of hearing something from the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean makes this sound feel extra eerie. When scientists first picked up the bio-twang, they were pretty puzzled. The sound has a strange, almost mechanical quality to it, which is why it was given the name Western Pacific bio-twang. Sharon Newkirk, a senior faculty research assistant in marine bioacoustics at Oregon State University, described it as, quote, very distinct. She pointed out that the low-frequency moaning part is typical of baleen whales, but that twangy part really sets it apart from anything else. In fact, it's rare to find new vocalizations from baleen whales. So what exactly could have made the noise? Is it an odd call from a whale, or could it be something else? I'm not so sure the noise fits with what we typically imagine mermaids sounding like, but who the hell knows? Next up, we have the whistle. On July 7th, 1997, something bizarre got picked up by a single hydrophone, which is like an underwater microphone. The source of the sound, dubbed the whistle, has still never been identified. It's this ultra-low frequency noise that sounds kind of like a whistle, but really deep and eerie. Picture the sound you'd make if you blew air through a tiny gap between your lips, but imagine that echoing through the depths of the ocean. Despite tons of research and speculation, nobody knows for sure what made this noise. Some say it could be a new type of marine animal communicating in a way we haven't figured out yet, like a mermaid. Recorded back in 1997, the slowdown sound is a series of low-frequency sounds that rise and fall in a rhythmic pattern. Check it out. It's very haunting. It sounds almost like a subway train pulling into the station, except deep underwater. It's definitely not a sound you'd want to hear if you were out on the water alone. But scientists have never been able to 100% determine what it is. Some think it might be related to natural geological activity, movements in the Earth's crust, or underwater volcanic eruptions, but some think it could be a vocalization from an unknown marine creature. Interestingly, the sound wasn't only recorded once. Since 1997, it's been heard a handful of times each year, which raises even more questions about what could be making this noise. Is it a natural phenomenon, or is there something deeper in the ocean producing these sounds?
In 1959, a group of Japanese fishermen aboard the Kaiomaru No. 5 vessel were deep in the Pacific when they saw something floating near their ship. At first, they thought it was a person. As they drew closer, they saw a woman's head and upper body with long black hair and a pale face. Below the waist was a long, scaly tail. According to crew members, the creature locked eyes with them before diving beneath the water. One fisherman swore it swam faster than any fish he'd ever seen. The crew was so shaken that they recorded the event in their logbook. This account became one of Japan's most widely discussed modern mermaid sightings. A few days later, later, another boat in the same area reported seeing a similar figure. To this day, no clear explanation has ever been found. One of the strangest mass sightings happened in 1737 in the Bering Sea. A group of Russian fishermen claimed to have seen a creature sitting on a floating piece of ice, combing its long hair. They described the upper half as a woman and the lower half as a fishtail, greenish in color. The creature then plunged into the water and reappeared on the other side of the boat, almost as if it was circling them. Terrified, the fishermen returned to shore and told others. Within weeks, more boats reported the same thing. This incident caused what became known as the Bering Mermaid Panic. Entire fishing crews refused to go out to sea at night. Reports continued for months before finally fading away. While some historians think they may have seen seals or sea cows, the detailed descriptions make this case one of the most persistent in northern waters. Not all mermaid sightings happen in the ocean. In 2012, construction workers and fishermen in Zimbabwe claimed they encountered a mermaid-like creature in the reservoirs of Gokwe and Mutare. The fishermen said they saw a pale figure with long hair rise out of the water at night. It allegedly made strange noises and scared them off. The workers refused to return to the sites, and the sightings became such a big deal that government officials brought in traditional healers to perform rituals. Local officials didn't deny the reports. In fact, they confirmed that multiple crews had refused to work because they believed a mermaid lived in the water. To this day, many locals insist the creature is real, and it remains one of Africa's most widely reported mermaid encounters. In 2010, just a year after the Kurit Yam sightings, another group of fishermen near Haifa, Israel, claimed to have chased a mermaid-like creature through the water. They were out late at night when they saw what they thought was a woman sitting on a rock. She turned, splashed her tail, and dove in. The fishermen gave chase in their boat. They said the creature moved faster than they could follow and eventually disappeared into deeper waters. What made this story so compelling was that it was reported alongside dozens of other local sightings. News crews even set up cameras along the shore, hoping to catch something on tape. Although no footage was ever captured, the consistency in witness statements made this case hard to ignore. Some speculated it was a dolphin, but the fishermen insist the face they saw was unmistakably human. Our final story comes from the Moken Sea nomads of Thailand, a group of fishermen who have lived on the water for centuries. In the early 2000s, a group of them claimed to have seen a pale, long-haired figure swimming just below the surface near their boats. They said it moved with incredible grace, surfacing briefly before diving down again. The creature didn't appear aggressive, but kept a distance as if it was watching them. Multiple fishermen saw it at once, and their stories matched in detail. The Moken people have a long history of mermaid legends, but this sighting stood out because it was one of the first they described to outsiders in detail. They claimed the creature's skin almost seemed to glow beneath the moonlight. No tourists or scientists were present, but the men who saw it swear to this day that it was real.
This has become a rather well-known piece of footage taken in 2013 off the coast of Mallorca, Spain. It has some people convinced that a real mermaid was captured on camera that day. A tourist filming from a boat caught something unusual perched on a rocky outcrop near the shore. At first glance, it looks like some kind of sea creature with long fish-like tail, a bluish tint, but what is it doing out of the water? And when you get a closer look, it gets even stranger. The upper body seems oddly human, with two arms and a rounded head. At first, it looks motionless, almost like a statue, but then it moves. So, what's really going on here? Could this be proof that mermaids exist? Is it an elaborate hoax, some clever CGI, or just someone in a costume? Let us know what you think. This man's seen and heard some very eerie stuff while out on the water. Ryan Coleman is a fisherman from New Bedford, Massachusetts, going by Sauce90 on TikTok. He's posted some pretty eerie videos on there, most of them having to do with unsettling things that he sees or hears out at sea late at night. In this first clip, he captures something swimming near the surface of the water at a pretty solid clip, keeping up with the boat. But this next part is where it gets really eerie. It's late at night, and now he starts hearing this haunting cry, almost like a siren's call, coming from somewhere out in the waves.
I hear him. Where's he at? What the f is that noise, bro?
It's cool actually seeing something like this. You really get a sense of why so many sailors back in the day would spin tales of strange encounters they had out at sea, and what they could only assume were ghostly cries of mermaids luring them into the water. If you didn't know any better, that's exactly what you'd probably think too. A lot of commenters say this is most likely the sound of orcas though, but all the same, it's this pretty eerie, haunting sound. Now, fake mermaid videos are a dime a dozen. You see a lot of AI ones these days, a lot of CG ones, but this one is very well done, and it's eerie, it's creepy. I do not like it. Imagine swimming around and feeling something slimy brush over your leg, and then seeing this pale, horrifying looking water ghoul swimming right next to you. Now, I do not think the video is real, but it's creepy all the same. The movement of the water, the quality of the costume, it looks really good. It doesn't look like CG to me. It looks like it's actually someone in a costume, which makes it even more impressive. This took some a bit more dedication, and I don't know where it was filmed, so the mystery behind it just adds to the eeriness. From a fisherman of Reddit comes a wild story of an encounter in Oregon. It goes as follows. This happened a few years ago off the coast of Newport, Oregon. I never know if it's Oregon or Oregon. I hear it pronounced different ways. You locals will have to let me know in the comments. Anyway, continuing on. I was working on a small trawler, a 3-man crew dragging for shrimp about 40 miles out. Around 3 a.m., I'm doing a gear check alone at the stern when I hear a splash. I figure it's a dolphin or maybe a sea lion, nothing unusual out there. But when I shine my light over the side, I catch a flash of something just under the surface. Not a fish, not anything I recognized. It was pale with limbs. Long limbs. Honestly, it looked like a person swimming parallel to the boat, just below the waterline, head tilted up like it was watching me. I couldn't make out a face, just the shape. I called one of the guys over, but by the time he came out, it was gone. He laughed it off, told me I was overtired and fair. I didn't argue, but for the rest of the night, every time I passed the stern, I had this feeling like something was pacing us underwater. I've seen some weird things in trawl nets, but nothing ever gave me that feeling before. We didn't catch much that trip. I didn't sleep. I still don't like working nights after that. Now imagine you're out on the water just fishing, enjoying the day, when suddenly something huge breaches the water. Something like this. Patricia and her fiance Dave were fishing near Sanibel, Florida on October 6th of 2013 when they spotted whatever that was. They said it was at least 20 feet long, cutting through the waves at high speed before breaching the surface and twisting around, almost like it had wrapped itself around something before vanishing again. The video uploaded to the Residual Payments YouTube channel is unsettling for a couple reasons. First, the movement in the water starts on the left side, and then out of nowhere, something much further away bursts to the surface. So what are we looking at here? Is it two creatures? Or worse, is it just one really big, fast-moving animal? Little Mermaid? More like the chunker mermaid, the next Disney classic. Now, what really sells the footage is the reaction from Patricia and Dave. You can hear them in the background, and they sound genuinely freaked out. These aren't tourists mistaking a dolphin for a monster. They're Florida natives who've spent their whole lives around the water, and they were adamant that this thing was not a dolphin or a manatee. Whatever they saw that day left them completely baffled.
You thought the last batch of mermaid legends was weird. Well, the ocean has a way of keeping secrets, and these new stories are even stranger. From ancient carvings in the Arctic to modern sonar readings showing something swimming below oil rigs, these are not fairy tales. These are real reports shared by scientists, sailors, and even military personnel. Buckle up, because these are more mermaid legends that might actually be true. In 2005, a team of commercial divers working off the coast of Baranof Island in Alaska reportedly encountered something terrifying while performing maintenance on deep-sea pipeline. According to a declassified safety report from the contractor, 2 divers surfaced early, shaken and refusing to go back down. One claimed he saw a, quote, human face with gills staring at him from a crevice in a rock. They described the creature as having webbed hands, reflective eyes, and scales that shimmered in their flashlight beams. Locals weren't surprised. In fact, some Inuit legends speak of sea people who dwell near that exact region. They even have a name: the Kalupalik, mermaid-like beings that lure people underwater with a hum you can only hear when submerged. High up on the windswept cliffs of the Faroe Islands, a remote chain in the North Atlantic, there is a cave that few people dare enter. Inside are carvings, ancient ones, etched into the rock. They clearly depict human-fish hybrids drawn with long hair, webbed hands, and tails. According to local historians, these markings predate Christian influence in the area and may have been created by Norse explorers. But here's the twist. One panel shows what appears to be a mermaid holding a dead man's head. Creepy? Absolutely. But archaeologists can't deny the authenticity, and some believe the site was a ritual space used to ask protection from sea spirits during voyages. These weren't just artistic depictions, they were warnings. In 2013, an offshore oil rig operating in the Gulf of Mexico experienced a strange sonar reading. Something large, fast, and warm-blooded was circling the base of the platform. Assuming it was a shark, divers went to inspect the structure, but returned reporting, quote, "something strange watching us from the shadows." One diver swore he saw a pale-skinned human-like figure swimming against the current with almost no effort. He said it had no breathing apparatus, yet it was moving at least 60 feet down. Internal emails from the rig, later leaked online, referred to it as, quote, "the Mermaid incident." No formal statement was ever released, and the crew involved were reassigned shortly after. Most people think of the Fiji mermaid as a 19th century hoax, an ugly little thing that turned out to be a monkey sewn to a fish. But here's what most people don't know. There were dozens of reports of similar creatures in the South Pacific long before it became a circus attraction. Fishermen from the islands have passed down stories for generations of a creature with glowing eyes and silver fins that comes to surface during storms. Some researchers believe the, quote, "original Fiji mermaid shown by P.T. Barnum may have been a poorly preserved copy of something real because other specimens that looked nearly identical were reportedly destroyed by British colonists trying to, quote, "clean up native beliefs." In 1978, a geologist hiking near Iceland stumbled across a strange fossil embedded in a rock wall. It looked like a partial skeleton, with a humanoid rib cage, scaled lower limbs, and elongated finger bones. He turned it over to the University of Iceland for study, and then it vanished. To this day, only photographs remain. Some experts suggested it was a hoax or misidentified fish bones, but the proportions didn't match any known marine species. What's stranger is that mermaid sightings are extremely common in Icelandic folklore, especially in that region. Locals believe that fossil was proof of an evil sea witch believed to lure sailors into whirlpools and drown them. In 1730, Hans Egede, a Danish-Norwegian missionary, wrote about something he saw while sailing near Greenland, a creature that defied explanation. He described it as having a human head and torso with a fish-like tail. According to Egede, the creature rose beside the boat, stared directly at the crew, then slowly sank into the sea. What makes this account so unsettling is who Hans Egede was. A serious, devout man whose writings were focused on converting Inuit populations, not really fantasy. He wasn't known for exaggeration or tall tales. In fact, many of his missionary accounts are painfully dry. So for him to suddenly document a mermaid, well, it's a bit odd. Historians today still include Egede's account in discussions of unexplained ocean phenomena. He even sketched the creature in later versions of his log. He either hallucinated or he saw something that he really couldn't explain. Japan's version of a mermaid is not the romantic beauty you'd expect. Known as the Ningyo, this creature is a mix of human and fish with a grotesque twist. Golden scales, sharp claws, and a monkey-like mouth filled with tiny human teeth. According to ancient legend, eating the flesh of these creatures grants eternal life, but catching one brings disaster. In the 1800s, fishermen supposedly caught one off the coast of Shikoku Island. The creature died shortly after, but was preserved and shown to a local official. And here's where things get even stranger. Reports say its remains were later hidden in a Buddhist temple to avoid bringing misfortune. In 2022, scientists analyzed a mummified mermaid stored in a shrine. Though DNA testing showed it was likely constructed from various animals, the preservation techniques suggest someone genuinely believed it was real. So why go to such lengths if it was all just a hoax? In Serbia's Lake Varana, locals whisper about the Mermaid of Black Lake, a pale, humanoid figure with long black hair that emerges on foggy mornings. In the early 2000s, a group of hikers claimed to have seen the creature from a distance, describing it as female in shape but with unblinking white eyes and scales across its arms. When they tried to approach, it vanished into the water with a splash. What's eerie is that locals had told nearly identical stories for decades, even before modern media could influence the narrative. In 2013, an Icelandic diving team exploring an underwater cave near Greenland captured something odd on camera. The footage, which was briefly circulated online before being lost, showed a humanoid figure with fins darting behind a rock. The diver filming could be heard screaming underwater before the camera cut out. Though skeptics cried hoax, the divers themselves, experienced professionals, stood by what they saw. Some believe the footage was confiscated due to its implications, and it doesn't help that government bodies reportedly shut down that cave to public access not long after. In the 1940s, fishermen off the coast of Benin, West Africa, claimed to have found what looked like a mermaid corpse tangled in their net. The body, which reportedly had webbed hands, fish-like skin, and a mostly human skull, was taken to local authorities. But within days, it was removed by officials and allegedly flown to France for study. Nothing was ever released to the public, and what makes this case so strange is how many unrelated locals swore they saw it and how quickly it was covered up. Some claim it was part of the Mamiwata legend, a powerful mermaid spirit worshipped across West Africa. In 1967, a ferry captain off the coast of British Columbia saw something on the rocks that stunned him. He wasn't alone. Passengers on board reported seeing a blonde-haired mermaid lounging on the rocks near Main Island. Photos were taken and one even made it to a local newspaper. Some said it was a prank, but others insisted that it was real. In fact, the town embraced the story so much they started selling mermaid souvenirs. The strange thing, no one ever came forward to claim it as a hoax. No models, no performers, no confessions, just a mystery that remains unsolved to this day.
In Japan, a mermaid mummy has been sitting in a temple for centuries, and no one really knows where it came from. Off the coast of Hawaii, a dive boat captain and his crew claimed they saw a mermaid swimming with dolphins, and he even snapped photos that were later confirmed to be unedited. In Zimbabwe, dam workers were so terrified of mermaids pulling people underwater that they abandoned their jobs. These are disturbing mermaid discoveries scientists can't explain. In Okayama Prefecture in Japan, there's a mysterious mummy that's been unsettling people for centuries, and that's because it's supposedly a mermaid mummy. It's about 30 centimeters long with the upper body of what looks like a human or humanoid and the lower body of a fish. It still has hair on its head, teeth, nails, and scales, and its face is frozen in what looks like this silent scream, with its hands pulled up toward its mouth. The artifact's been kept at a temple in Asakuchi where some people worship it. The temple's chief priest compared the mummy to Amabie, a mythical creature that's said to protect people from plagues. Supposedly, it also grants immortality to whoever tastes its flesh. The mummy, I mean, and I'm not sure anyone's been brave enough to try. According to an old note stored with the mummy, it was supposedly caught in a fishing net somewhere off the coast of Tosa province between 1736 and 1741. Over time, it passed through several hands before ending up at the temple. For years, the mummy was displayed in a glass case for visitors, but now it's stored safely in a fireproof box to protect it from falling apart. Just recently though, researchers from Kurashiki University of Science and the Arts, along with some folklore experts, started studying the mummy for the first time. They're using tests like CT scans and DNA analysis to figure out what it's actually made of. Some mermaid mummies in Japan have been proven to be crafted fakes, usually made by stitching together parts of fish and monkeys, but this one hasn't been officially confirmed yet. Hiroshi Kinoshita, who helped launch the project, says it's a chance to explore not just whether it's real, but what it means in Japanese folklore. For more than 50 years, people in Hawaii have claimed to see a mermaid swimming off the coast of Big Island, but the story is usually written off as local legends. That changed in 1998 when a dive boat captain named Jeff Leitcher said he not only saw the creature, but managed to capture it on film. Leitcher, who runs Jack's Diving Locker, was out on April 12, 1998 with 6 other divers about 20 minutes from Hawaii's Kona coast when something strange happened. I'd heard about her before, Leitcher said. Most of us who are out in these waters regularly have heard stories, but I'd never seen her until that morning. While heading out toward Kaiwi Point, a school of dolphins began swimming alongside their boat when one of the crew members suddenly started shouting and pointing at the water. I couldn't believe what I saw. There, not 10 feet from the bow, was what looked like a nude woman, Leitcher said. She had long flowing hair and one of the most beautiful faces I've ever seen. But there's no way a human being could be swimming so fast. She was keeping right up with the dolphins. Leitcher said the creature then jumped out of the water and said the entire lower half of her was, quote, covered with scales and tapered back into a huge fishtail. She jumped once more, then disappeared under the surface. According to Leitcher, all 10 people on the boat saw it as well, but that wasn't the end of it. About an hour later, while diving at the point, Leitcher said he had another close encounter. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my right leg. She shot by me like a streak of lightning, then turned and came back past me, swimming the other way. I just aimed the camera and started snapping pictures. I kept shooting as she broke the surface and swam away. These photos here were later analyzed by 3 separate photography labs, which all concluded that the images had not been altered or tampered with. I feel very lucky that I'm the one to finally prove to the world what people here have known for half a century, Leitcher said. The Kaiwi Point mermaid is real. Back in 2012, Zimbabwe ran into a strange problem at a couple of dam sites. Workers were so scared of mermaids that they just straight up abandoned their posts. Water Resources Minister Sam Sepepa Nkomo explained the situation during a Senate meeting, saying that workers believed mermaids were living in the reservoirs and pulling people underwater. They were so freaked out that they refused to come back. And hey, fair enough. Doesn't sound worth it to me either. There are plenty of jobs that don't involve getting dragged underwater and drowned by mythical creatures. To try and fix the issue though, the government brought in traditional chiefs to perform rituals to get rid of these mermaids. Nkomo said these ceremonies were done to, quote, exorcise mermaids believed to inhabit reservoirs. Now, thinking the problem might just be some local superstition, Nkomo also tried hiring foreign workers, figuring they wouldn't buy into the stories, but even those workers ended up reporting weird sightings and refused to continue the job. Some people, including Nkomo himself, wondered if dangerous water currents might have been to blame here instead of anything supernatural. But whatever the case, the government went ahead with the traditional rituals to calm everyone down, get work moving again. So I have no idea what really went on here, but what a bizarre story. Next up is a very creepy piece of footage. Again, this is a mermaid carcass, or at least that's really what it looks like. The footage was taken after a hurricane. We watch as our camera person walks along a beach, trees and debris are scattered across the sand, but then the camera lands on something fishy having washed ashore. At first it looks like it's just a large fish, but the longer you look at it, you realize there's a head of hair on it. Our brave cameraman walks closer to the beached creature and we see what looks to be a mummified mermaid. It has bony human-looking arms and, most horrifyingly, a human-looking head. Again, very grotesque and mummified. And this is probably not how you'd like to imagine coming across a mythical creature. Now, of course, something like this could be faked. Special effects prosthetics are pretty convincing sometimes, but even if it is faked, it's very well done. One of the top comments in the video posted by Cajun2197 states the following: "I've seen real mummies. This looks frighteningly real. The skin pulled back around the mouth as it dried, bulging eyes, taut cheekbones, the ribs and pelvis under dark dried flesh, the fins brittle, exactly like a dead fish dying in the sun." There was another video by someone else filming this creature when it was less decomposed. The arm was more intact and the cheek was not rotting out. Now, if this is fake, someone went to a great deal of trouble to do this. And why? What I find interesting about that comment, aside from the description of how realistic this thing looks, is that someone else also filmed this thing. That means the person filming this video may have not been involved with the hoax, if it is indeed a hoax. Pretty interesting video, but again, what do you all think? Next on the list is the cave dive. This video was uploaded to YouTube by Suerte Mal Suerte, who stated that he'd been cave diving in a cenote cave near Cancun when he spotted something that looked a lot like a mermaid. A beautiful piece of footage here, by the way. We watch as he descends into the cave, diving underwater, and as he swims further into the depths, something swims by, right under one of his buddy's feet. Unlike some of the other footage on this list, this one is pretty clear. Hard to look at this creature and see anything else but a mermaid. Is this a woman in a very solid mermaid costume though, or do you think this is genuine? From Ladder Towel 9403 comes a story about an incredibly disturbing fishing trip. I was fishing in a river about 1.5 miles from my grandmother's house. I'd always walked there and fished from the bank where I'd gone since I was young. I was down fishing with my dog Josie and I was sitting and leaning against a tree. Then my bobber went down hard and my rod almost went out of my hands. I figured I had a bass or catfish. For some reason though, I started following my line as if something was drawing me in. Josie was freaking out, yelling and even biting my leg trying to get me back, but I kept following it almost like I was in a trance. Then something broke the surface of the water right in front of me. All I could see was this torso with a greenish brown head, and I saw its hand, yes, a hand, was pulling my line towards it, and I was so scared but couldn't stop as it continued to pull me closer. Josie was between us, barking and snapping at it, and suddenly I was able to go back towards the bank, leaving everything. I saw it grab Josie, and going for my blade, I cut the line, grabbed Josie, and ran out of the water. I heard a weird slapping sound and a grunt, and I just kept running until I was almost home. Josie was hurt, one of her ears were almost gone. Finally though, I got to the house. I was crying and threw her in the car and went straight to the vet. Still wet and shaking, I told the vet something got her and waited anxiously until he came back and said that she was lucky, that he had extracted a tooth from her skull. He said it looked like an alligator tooth, but I knew better. I never told my family about what happened, but I knew damn well it wasn't an alligator. In 2009, a story came out about a series of mermaid sightings in Israel. The mayor of the small coastal town of Kiryat Yam was offering $1 million to whoever could prove the creature's existence. Now, the sightings didn't start in 2009. There had been reports of a mermaid-like creature for years before, but in the summer of that year, reports had been rising dramatically. The creature would often appear at sunset and perform a few tricks in the water before diving deeper into the depths. One man, Shlomo Cohen, described having spotted it, saying, "I was with friends when suddenly we saw a woman lying on the sand in a weird way. First I thought she was just another sunbather, but when we approached, she jumped into the water and disappeared. We were all in shock because we saw she had a tail." Redditor Cornholio69666, great name, posted their story about almost being dragged under the water by something. They wrote, "I'm living in the Caribbean in Utila, Honduras. Once I was in Neptune's, one of the most virgin beaches here, and I was just swimming, not even diving or snorkeling, and I felt a hand pulling me. And I have long hair to my shoulders. I'm 6'5", so it started pulling my hair. Obviously I panicked, and my two friends were looking at me like, what the F is going on? So I got back to the dock and then I spot a remora. They have a soft tissue that makes suction, and that's how they cling to sharks and whales. But I've never encountered a fish that pulls down. My friend is a diving instructor and she got into the water. The remora never got close to her, but it touched my legs, arms, it pulled my hair. My diving instructor friend vouches for my mermaid story and I believe in them. honestly. And finally, we have the Australian mermaid sighting. Now, despite what you may think about the validity of this piece of footage, you cannot deny how darn beautiful it looks. And not just the supposed mermaid either, the bright blue, the abundance of the marine life, the sound of the water. It's an oddly relaxing video. We've looked at some dark stuff in this list, so this is a nice one to leave on. So our camera person is doing a dive, filming the beautiful waters before panning over to observe something swimming through the water. It looks like your classic mythological mermaid. It has a long fishy tail, and we also briefly see human-looking arms moving gracefully through the water before swimming out of sight deeper into the murkiness of the depths. Whether this was a real mermaid sighting or not, personally I err on the side of yes, but it's a lot of unexplored ocean out there. Whether or not it's a genuine thing, it's pretty cool. I really do hope that it's real, at the very least. A tiny shriveled mermaid with a fishtail and a bony torso had people lining up in 1842, staring at what they thought were real mermaid remains. In 2012, a skeleton with a human top half and a long, twisting tail sat on display in Denmark's National Museum. And in 2011, a pale, decayed mermaid corpse washed up on the banks of a Bulgarian river. These are mermaid skeletons found in places that shouldn't exist. Back in 1842, a man named P.T. Barnum, now remembered as the king of circus hoaxes, showed off something he was calling the Fiji mermaid at his American Museum in New York. Burnham described it himself as an ugly, dried-up, black-looking diminutive specimen, giving it the appearance of having died in great agony. Well, sign me up. People just lined up like crazy to see this thing, a shriveled little corpse with a fish tail and a bony humanoid torso. For a while, people thought they were staring at the remains of a real mermaid. But it turns out this was stitched together by Japanese fishermen, basically the upper half of a monkey sewn to the lower half of a fish. But here's what's pretty interesting. Even after Burnham admitted it was fake, people kept showing up. It worked because they just wanted to believe. I mean, plus, that just sounds like a wild thing to see in person. Versions of the Fiji mermaid still pop up today in Ripley's museums and roadside sideshows, sometimes made from turtles, sometimes stuffed with paper and glue, but that creepy, janky look is always the same. P.T. Barnum's mermaid took a very old Japanese tradition and brought it to the West, kicking off a whole wave, see what I did there, of mermaid obsession over here. This tiny stitched up thing ended up shaping what a lot of us picture when we hear the words mermaid skeleton. In 2012, this odd looking thing was displayed at the Danish National Museum. It looked like the skeleton of a mermaid. Human bones up top, a long tail instead of legs. There was also a plaque by the display with a very official scientific sounding name, Hydronymphus pesky, like this was some long lost species that had finally been discovered. And for a while, people actually thought it might be legit. The whole thing was actually built by an artist named Millet Rude. It's not entirely fake though. She did use real human bones for the top half. It gives it some authenticity for sure. The tail she made herself though, and she did a damn good job because it looks pretty convincing to me. And then it ended up touring around galleries and zoos, and people kept taking pictures and calling this proof of mermaids. Even now, images of the display are still shared around online, and without context, some swear it's real. It's not, it's just a really good art piece that fooled a lot of people. This isn't the only time Denmark's had a weird encounter with mermaid bones, though. Speaking of mermaid skeletons showing up in odd places, take a look at this. A lot of Copenhagen locals were pretty surprised to see a skeleton with a fishtail while strolling along the waterfront, especially because they're used to seeing this. So one of the most famous tourist spots in Copenhagen is the Little Mermaid statue. It's a small bronze sculpture, only about 4 feet tall, made by Erik Erikson, and based on Hans Christian Andersen's famous fairy tale, The Little Mermaid. The statue's been sitting on a rock by the harbor since 1913, and millions of people have visited, taken photos with it, and called it a national treasure. But in 2010, something unusual happened. The statue was temporarily moved to Shanghai to be part of the Danish pavilion at the World Expo. It stayed there for months from March to November, which left her rock back in Copenhagen completely empty. That's when someone came up with a funny idea. On April 1st, 2010, Then, a mermaid skeleton suddenly appeared near the statue's usual spot. It was sitting in the same pose as the original statue, and for 2 hours people gathered and took photos, entertained but confused and maybe even a little creeped out. I mean, did some wacko attach a fishtail to a human skeleton and put it out on display as some sick joke? Well, kinda. These were actually human bones from the hips up attached to the tail of a swordfish. It was made a few years earlier as part of a museum exhibit about mythical creatures. The prank was put together by Hans Strager, who was the head of exhibitions at the time. Got tons of attention and became one of the most talked about mermaid sightings in Denmark. Around 2011, photos started popping up online of what looked like a pale, half-decayed mermaid corpse lying on the banks of the Vltava River in Bulgaria. People went wild over this. Headlines screaming "mermaid found" were all over social media, and it makes sense. I mean, if you randomly came across these images at a time before AI could just render stuff like this in 20 seconds, you'd probably do a double take. The thing looked freaky, scaly skin, webbed fingers, and that ghostly pale look with a human-ish shape. Not only that, but it just looked a little too real. But this was actually a super detailed movie prop. The figure was eventually traced back to a man named Joel Harlow, the special effects artist behind Pirates of the Caribbean. It turns out he'd made this mermaid corpse for the films. Somehow, it ended up in the river though. Whether as a prank or entirely by accident, no one's really sure. In the summer of 2019, people hanging out on the beach in Worthing, England spotted something strange leaning against one of the wooden barriers that break up the shoreline. From a distance, it looked like a human skeleton, but the legs were fused together like a tail. Up close, you could see the ribcage and skull looked pretty real. A man named Ben Merchant was one of the first to spot the thing and snapped a photo of it. For a few hours, it had everyone staring and wondering if this thing had actually washed up from the sea. Well, once again, this was an art piece made by local sculptor Rosie Lee. She'd been given part of a skeleton and asked to turn it into something eye-catching, so she created the tail and posed the bones to mimic a mermaid. It didn't fool any scientists, but it still creeped a few people out. From a now deleted Reddit user comes a story about an experience a man had while at the beach. He writes, "I'm posting here because I don't know where else to post and ask about this. I was at the beach with some family. My daughter and I were in the water, maybe 100 yards or so offshore. I was maybe 15 feet out past her when I heard this noise. The only way I can describe it is radar, sonar-ish. It was deep, and I felt it. I've been around the ocean my whole life, 40 years, and never heard anything like this. Then I heard it again. I swam back to her and asked if she heard it. She said yes. I told her to mimic the sound, and she did. Then it happened one more time, and then a young guy yells over, 'Did you hear that? That's scary.' Is it possible, hypothetically, that if a submarine is offshore but close, you could hear it and feel the instruments? Otherwise, I have no explanation." Sticking with Reddit for a minute, one user named CrazyPrior5350 asked people to share some of the weirdest or creepiest sounds people had heard at sea. One user commented, "I've heard singing and speaking voices that didn't belong to anyone on the boat. It was just a little louder than a whisper, basically just loud enough that it was understandable. Everyone else heard it too, but it was oddly comforting instead of creepy." And yeah, this sounds a lot like the types of legends of mermaid sounds I discussed at the top of the video, doesn't it? And other commenters agreed. But one commenter did say that sound travels really easily on water, which is true, to which the user responded, "It has happened a few times with the boat I'm on being the only one in eyesight, but I usually chalk it up to stuff like that. Unless my nieces or nephews hear it too, then I say it's mermaids or something." The Arctic ping was a mysterious noise reported in 2016 near a small Inuit hamlet called Igloolik in Nunavut. Hunters in the area began to notice this strange pinging noise coming from the Fury and Hecla Strait, which is about 75 miles northwest of their community. What made the sound especially concerning wasn't just how odd it was, it actually seemed to be having a negative effect on the wildlife. The hunters found that the noise seemed to be scaring away the sea mammals that they rely on for food. The sound appeared to be originating from the sea floor, But it wasn't just a few locals hearing these sounds. It got serious enough that they had to call the military in to investigate. And the military claimed they couldn't find any concrete source of this pinging. So what are some possible explanations? Well, aside from mermaids, of course, I mean, that's obvious. One theory that was floating around was that Greenpeace activists might have been causing it, trying to scare off animals to protect them from hunters. This next underwater sound is still yet to be fully explained. Some think it may have been caused by an iceberg, but either way, it's still a super haunting recording. The eerie sound has been dubbed Julia and was captured by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. When the NOAA placed hydrophones deep in the ocean, they unexpectedly picked up this low-frequency sound resembling a haunting, almost ghostly moan. A lot of people who listen to this think that there's something so alive about the sound. It's like something only a living creature could make. And yeah, to me, totally sounds like some sort of large sea creature or maybe a mermaid type animal. I don't know what it is about underwater recordings. There's something so unsettling about them. I think it's the way the sound carries underwater. You know, they have this very spacey, ethereal quality about them. I also think that's just the fear of the unknown. We picture ourselves submerged in the expanse of the dark depths of the sea before hearing a low, droning, lonely hum from something lurking in the distance. It's just creepy. The bloop is a famous underwater sound that has still yet to be 100% identified. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration was doing their thing. They were monitoring underwater sounds in the Pacific Ocean when they came across this eerie recording. The bloop was like nothing they had ever heard before. It was this crazy low-frequency noise that lasted for an entire minute. People were going nuts trying to figure out what could have made such a sound. Of course, wild theories started flying around. Some folks thought it was some kind of massive sea creature, like a supersized version of Nessie or Kraken. Others were convinced that maybe it was aliens, because, you know, when we don't know what something is, it's got to be a ghost or aliens, right? But as it turns out, the NOAA scientists had a more down-to-earth explanation. They reckon that the bloop was caused by a huge chunk of ice breaking off from a glacier and falling into the ocean. You know, scientists are always trying to ruin the fun. I still like to think it's a sea creature. And again, the sea, the ocean, it's vast.
For centuries, fishermen across the world have told stories of seeing something strange in the water. Not just shadows or waves, but figures with long hair, shimmering tails, and eerily human faces staring back at them. Some dismissed it as exhaustion at sea, others swore it was real. Today we're diving into 10 of the most chilling and fascinating real mermaid sightings fishermen swear actually happened. And the strangest part? Many of these cases were investigated, documented, or witnessed by entire crews. Let's dive in. It began with a storm. Fishermen off the coast of Toyama Bay in Japan were pulling in their nets after days at sea when they saw something trapped inside. At first, they thought it was a large fish, but as they hauled it closer, they froze. The creature had the face of a human woman. Its mouth was small, its hair was long, and its body ended in a silvery fishtail. This encounter became one of the earliest recorded mermaid sightings in Japan. Local officials were called and the body was allegedly displayed for villagers to see. According to accounts from the time, the creature was around 10 feet long, it had small, sharp teeth and pale white skin. Centuries later, researchers found scrolls and illustrations describing this. Unlike the Western idea of beautiful mermaids, the Japanese mermaids were believed to bring either good fortune or disaster, depending on how they were treated. Fishermen swore the creature appeared just before a major storm that destroyed several boats. Some believed it was a warning. The freezing waters of Newfoundland are the last place most people would expect to see a mermaid, but in 1614, explorer and fisherman John Smith claimed exactly that. While on a fishing expedition, Smith described seeing a creature with long, green hair, porcelain skin, and eyes as large as saucers. He wrote that she had the upper body of a woman and the lower half of a fish. What's stranger is he said he felt, quote, an affection toward the creature, believing at first it was a woman swimming near the boat. It wasn't until he saw the tail flick beneath the waves that he realized it wasn't a human. This account became famous because of who recorded it. Smith was not just any fisherman. He was the same man who became one of the founders of the colony of Virginia. His journals are preserved, and historians have debated for centuries whether he saw a manatee or something else entirely. But according to Smith himself, it was no animal that he recognized. Fast forward to modern times. In 2009, fishermen off the coast of Kiryat Yam, Israel, claimed to have seen something leaping out of the water at sunset. One man said he thought it was a swimmer, then the figure bent its tail, splashed the water, and vanished. Multiple witnesses reported the same thing over several weeks. The sightings became so widespread that the town actually offered a reward of $1 million to anyone who could bring proof of the mermaid. The fishermen described the creature as pale, with a woman's upper body and a shimmering tail. Some said she liked to appear at dusk, perching on rocks. Authorities investigated, but no body or physical evidence was found. Still, the story made international news. Even years later, many fishermen insist what they saw wasn't a seal or a dolphin. They swear that it was a mermaid. During World War II, Japanese soldiers and local Indonesian farmers on the Kai Islands reported one of the most detailed mermaid encounters ever recorded. The creature they saw wasn't the beautiful fairy tale mermaid. It was something much stranger. Locals call it a human fish. The fishermen claimed it had a reddish pink skin, a mouth shaped like a carp's, long arms, and spines along its head. It wasn't graceful or delicate. They said it swam aggressively and let out a shrill sound when approached. Japanese Sergeant Taro Horiba reported seeing the creature himself while fishing with locals. He described it as about 5 feet long with webbed hands and a fish-like tail. These sightings were so convincing that the Japanese military sent out patrols to try and capture one. They never succeeded, but official reports from 1943 still exist describing the bizarre encounters. Most people have heard about the Fiji mermaid, famously displayed by P.T. Barnum in the 1800s. It was later exposed as a hoax made from a monkey torso and a fishtail, but what many people don't know is that the display was actually inspired by repeated reports from Pacific fishermen who swore they'd seen similar creatures. In the early 19th century, sailors and fishermen in the South Pacific claimed to have caught mermaid-like creatures with small humanoid figures. One British captain wrote in his logbook that he saw a, quote, shriveled womanfish with a long tail and, quote, finger-like claws. While Barnum's display was fake, the sightings that inspired it were real. These accounts were recorded by multiple crews at the time, and some naturalists even examined dried remains that have since vanished. Whether they were misidentified marine animals or something else, those fishermen swore they caught something unlike anything they'd ever seen before.